What do you think?
I think we're dead meat. Real dead meat.
You're dead meat! Go ahead and laugh, you guys. Find the final little bastards that did this. They're dead meat.
Hey, welcome to the Dead Meat Podcast, an extension of the YouTube channel Dead Meat. I'm James.
I'm Chelsea, and we're engaged, and we like to get scared together.
Hey, wow.
Our intro used to be boyfriend and girlfriend.
It's evolved.
So cute.
We're Rhett Link. We're not engaged.
We're constantly engaged in trying to do comedy.
Oh, there you
Right.
go.
Yes.
Nice.
But we are much like an old married couple.
Yeah.
So this is what you have to look forward to.
Okay. Yeah, as long as my beard can grow out like that, I'm excited.
Just give it time. Give it time.
How long you been engaged?
Just,
Few months. I'm like, what time of year is it?
it's been a rough time of year for us.
Like 2 months.
Yeah, about 2 months.
Oh.
Have you set a date?
No.
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
just about to come up for air after Halloween
Okay.
because October
Yeah.
is insane for us, and
Right.
then we will begin planning the wedding. It was mostly we got engaged, played a video game for 2 weeks, and then had to do Halloween stuff.
Yeah.
You're not going to come up for air and realize that holding your breath is not a good time to decide to get engaged.
Oh, that's true, yeah, because it cuts off the oxygen
right.
to the
You need
brain.
that.
Don't do that.
Uh-oh.
Right.
Yeah, I've been married for almost 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
damn.
So I was like, 20 years.
That's awesome.
What is it?
Almost 19 for you.
Almost. Is it almost 19 for you? And
I got married in the year 2000.
Wow, pre 9/11.
Yep.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it was
That
like
was 2001.
simpler times.
Yeah.
Right?
It was much easier to get married. It was a lot. Yeah, you didn't have to do the strip search.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
At the altar. Yeah.
Yeah, you could wear your shoes while you got married.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, if you need any marriage advice,
Oh.
Should you like the other person?
Initially, yes.
Okay.
you should be in counseling, like preemptively.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just
That's-
a part of being together.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
So
not a
we've done-
joke. That's
I'm
like,
not.
Yeah, no, we've
I'm
done that
giving you
before.
advice.
Yeah.
Come on.
You should
No,
be in
that's
counseling.
legit.
You're letting me on your podcast. I'm trying to be helpful.
When
Hell
we
yeah.
were deciding, like, we think it's time to get engaged, we went to counseling together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
yeah,
do it.
Everyone
couple
should be.
Everyone.
Every couple should be in counseling, and every person should be in therapy.
right.
Yeah.
Talk about stuff.
Yeah, especially if you're like really into horror movies to the point where like you keep demented
Yeah.
paraphernalia
right,
all
Yeah.
around you at all times.
It definitely was a day one thing where it's like, yeah, we cover horror movies, and the therapist was just like, interesting.
Yeah, it's like what's I want to interview you guys so badly.
No, don't let it happen.
I'm sorry.
You're
I'm
the
not
guest.
going to assert
Yeah, you
control
guys are
of
the
your
Oh,
podcast.
yeah, we should, like, introduce them.
Oh sure, yeah. These it's Rhett Link.
Rhett Link, you
fucking
know,
know
you know Rhett Link.
But the reason you're here specifically right
Let's
now.
do the late night thing where you hold the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
let's do it.
yeah.
Cool. It's their book is coming out. The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek.
Bleak Creek.
Yeah.
I
You,
love
you've got a soft preliminary copy, but if you go to bleakcreek.com, you can get yourself a nice hardback.
Yeah.
You can,
It's like
you
a
can-
turtle.
You can build with it. You can stack things on it.
You can defend your home with it.
Yeah, right. It
You
packs
know?
more of a punch than this.
You
Yeah.
can read it, and it'll make you scared, hopefully. It'll
Yeah.
make you laugh.
Hell yeah.
It might make you cry a little bit.
Maybe.
If you're open to that, it might get you engaged.
Right?
I'm not going to make any promises.
Yeah, we actually weren't engaged until we both
Right,
read this book,
exactly.
and we just
Yeah.
looked
We
at
did
each
it.
other. And
Mission
We
accomplished.
did it.
actually, yeah, if you're watching this or listening to it, the day it comes out, that's the same day this book comes out, right?
Yeah.
Tuesday,
October 29th.
October 29th. Hell yeah. Although I've had this copy for a while. Advanced
I was
uncorrected
gonna say,
proofs.
look at how
Yeah.
well loved this looks already. It's very it's been
This
on
has
many
traveled the
plane
country,
trips.
yeah.
You took it with you?
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed it. It's your second book, right?
Yeah,
First
so
novel?
the first book was nonfiction. It was more of like a memoir called The Book of Mythicality. And it was more like, hey, let's tell some stories from our childhood and then kind of make some sort of connection to, some advice, some life advice. So that one was more like, if you are already a fan, you've been watching what we do, this book is for you. But this book is definitely, like you said, first novel, so a fictional story, very much based on the world that we grew up in the 90s in the small town South, small town North Carolina. But of course, everything that happens in the book is completely made up. That's what fiction is.
Not everything.
Well,
But
everything that happens.
if
but-
you like us, you'll like the book. If you don't like us, I think you'll still like the book. And if you don't know us, we hope that you'll read the book and like it.
Sure.
Well, I mean, and that was what we were hoping
That's
for.
why
Why we were excited to I'm glad it worked out that we met each other at the It Too premiere.
Yeah.
Because we were like, YouTubers, because YouTubers have an audience, YouTubers, for better or for worse, have the ability to just try things and do things like write books.
Yeah.
And there is understandably a lot of skepticism that comes along with that. Because just because you can make a video from your bedroom doesn't mean that you have the experience necessary to be able to write a compelling story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's healthy skepticism associated with YouTubers doing anything besides YouTube. But we've made a career of trying other things and really priding ourselves on getting something right. If we're going to bring it into the world, we want it to be a product that we are proud of, and it has nothing to do with it's not based on leveraging popularity or an audience.
It's not like a cash grab.
It's like, hey, okay, maybe you'll like.
That's why the novel's free.
It's completely free. Yeah, so because you guys are sort of legit in this world.
No, thank
that
you.
we were like, okay, this is a perfect audience to talk to because we feel like the book stands on its own, and we want people who care about this kind of content to read it, not just because hey, those guys eat goat testicles on the internet.
How was that? Like, oh, huh.
That was
we brought
bad.
some.
Oh,
yeah.
good. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, one for everybody.
Yay.
And I hope an extra one to just leave on the set.
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just stand in
to
the set
slowly
there.
shrivel into a
Yeah.
raisin.
Yeah.
Like a shrunken head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, okay, I obviously know who you guys are and have known who you guys are, but I don't watch a lot of YouTube. I just don't really have the time for it. So
Understood.
I get it.
I'm busy making stuff. I
Right.
can't
Oh, yeah.
consume it. So
Yeah.
I'm not like a super fan. I don't know your personal lives or ins and outs. So I came at this book pretty blank slate, you know,
right.
and I still really enjoyed it.
Oh, cool.
It's so true to what you were just saying. It's not written just for Rhett and Link fans. It's written for anyone.
Yeah, I appreciated when we got because we knew we were taking a risk and letting you read it. And when we got the email back from you and you were like, hey, I'm not just saying this because I'm trying to be nice or because I like what you guys do on YouTube. Like, I actually liked it. And we were like, yes! And
Yeah,
then when you said,
it
hey,
means a
come
lot.
talk about it. Yeah, it meant it more.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so used to putting out a video every day that's just, I mean, oftentimes very ridiculous. And you get, I mean, we know the swath of comments that we're going to get, you know, because we've done over 1,600 episodes of Good Mythical Morning. So we kind of, you know, we do try new things, but we kind of know the world that those comments live in. But when you pour yourself into a novel in this story, especially when it pulls so much from our experience going in our freshman year of high school and like revisiting that and kind of pouring the specifics of ourselves into it and then trying to craft a story that works for anybody. It's like, okay, A, let's hope we get feedback. Let's hope people read it and that we get some sort of critical analysis. And B, I hope it's positive. I hope it moves people. You know, so this is a big week for us. You know? It's like there's a lot of. I'm a bit nervous because you put so much into it for almost 2 years.
Is that how long you've
Yeah.
been working on
Wow.
it? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, since like the initial conception of the idea and then fitting it into everything else that we do, it just takes a long time. You
Yeah,
know?
did you have to slow down production of anything else you were doing while you were working
No.
on this? Or no, you just
I mean, so
juggled?
we everything that we do that's ongoing, like Good Mythical Morning and our podcast Ear Biscuits and, you know, running our company, it's all, our time is at this point so scheduled because we've made it very clear, like, hey, we have these other things that we want to do, like write a book or develop a TV series or whatever.
Or have a family.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit of
and
that,
we like,
too.
you know, we try to get home for dinner every single night, and we try not to work on the weekends so we can spend time with our family. So, yeah, it's nothing slows down, but everything is so scheduled at this point to be able to allow us to actually have time
Oh, that's great.
to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
good to know. It's doable. Running a big YouTube channel, so time consuming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And weekends off. Oh, that's a
It
possibility.
can happen.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It is a
Fingers crossed.
possibility. Yeah, you can get there.
All right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think the reason that we want to talk about your book specifically is there is a horror element to it. It gets
definitely.
spooky.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of a slow burn. The first first 50 or so pages I was reading, I was like, I'm enjoying this, but where's like the horror stuff? But yeah,
You're instinctively counting bodies,
right? Yeah,
that's your life.
Kill
right?
count 0 right now. What the hell?
It's like if you went to work somewhere, and the X number of days since the last accident.
Yeah,
It's like you're the guy who gets frustrated when the number doesn't change.
X number of pages since the last body.
Yeah. Well, and that was very intentional, right? And I think that the way that it plays out is that it's designed to be reflective of the way that the world that we're trying to present, right? And so the world that we grew up in, small town South, right? And so there is a facade that, and this is true everywhere in the world, but
Where are you guys from?
We're from
Michigan,
the Detroit
originally.
area. Yeah.
okay.
Which is sometimes, I don't know, I've gotten that I sound like I have a southern accent sometimes, which is weird. No. Yeah, no, I don't hear it either. Yeah, thank you. I think it's mostly people
What do you
out
mean,
here.
thank
who
you?
say
You
that.
don't want one? You don't want one?
Right, but I think that for good reason, the South has this reputation for like there's a smile on your face and you're saying bless your heart, but you're stabbing somebody in the back with some gossip. And we wanted to, so that's sort of the starting point of the book is like you've got a town that feels sweet and normal and presentable, and you might be kind of lulled into thinking that like, okay, this is a normal place, but no, actually there's something very sinister going on underneath that facade. So we wanted to hint at the fact that the reason the book starts in sort of does start in a little bit of a faster paced, dark. Like originally, the first chapter just started at the pig picking,
Oh, okay, yeah.
the fundraiser at the beginning, and then we were like, well, let's take that story of someone trying to escape some place and not really knowing what the details are. Let's put that at the beginning, so at least it's a little bit of a cue to. No, there's going to be some action.
Yeah.
In fact, there's going to be a lot of action once it ramps up.
Yeah, and it's so funny because
If you want to see kids get cut, just wait.
right? It'll happen.
Be patient.
There's a bleeding child at the beginning, so you could press
And
forward.
there's more bleeding children as everything unfolds.
And that bleeding child ends up being one of my favorite characters too. I love it. Like I really loved just the wide variety of characters in this book. We'll talk about it in a way that doesn't really spoil anything since coming out the same day this is released. But yeah, there's so many characters who. By the end of the book, they're all playing a part, and I didn't even realize. I was like, oh, I thought they were just going to be like a one-off, like one-scene character, but no, now it's playing a part later on, and I just feel like it all ties together really well.
That's probably all the Seinfeld that we watched.
Yeah.
Like we've always had this fascination with like, okay, how many streams can you start, and then what are all the ways that they come together at the end? And we actually had people tell us, they were like, okay, well, the hardest part about writing a novel is going to be ending it. And we were like, what are you talking about? That's not going to be hard because we've already outlined the whole thing. We've only ever written screenplays and sketches and that kind of thing. So it's, which always start with an outline. And because there's two of us, we always work on this outline and get it very, very tight. And then you go, I'll go in and let's fill in the scenes and the dialogue. So we're like, let's do the same exact thing for this. So we're both on the same page. So we thought that we had it in the bag, but no, when we got to the end and we were like, we've really got to like satisfyingly close all these arcs in a way that all comes together, and that was by far the most difficult thing to pull off.
I forget what the metaphor. It's like a writing metaphor where
There's
gardening. There's the gardener and there's the I forget what the other type
Maybe
is.
like an architect.
But
or
it's
something,
like it's the difference between like if you're I think the gardener you're just kind of planting stuff and seeing what happens, and then versus if you're an architect you have a blueprint for something and you know where it's gonna
We definitely had the architect approach because because it's the two of us working together, and at a certain point you got to figure out who's going to do what. I mean, you want to make sure you're on the same page, and that especially the big ideas that that we've got it paced out, and we know where it's going.
Yeah.
I mean, at the halfway point, Rhett's more like he's good at being able to step back and kind of have the big picture idea. And there was a point where there was like you had this panic moment that you started doing all of these calculations in terms of like, at this rate, given the outline that we have and the story we need to tell, then this book is going to be like twice as long as it needs to be.
I think there was a point in which I was like, if we continue on writing according to the outline, this book is going to be like 130,000 words, which is not a good first novel, especially, again, and we're so practical. I mean, like we told you before we started talking, we have engineering degrees.
Yeah.
And so we approach everything super practically, and we're super self-aware. So we know about the stigma that comes along with being a YouTuber, and it's like, hey, listen, we're asking you to read this book. We think it's good, but we're not going to ask you to read an extra long novel as a debut novel, as people who've never written a novel before. So we were like, we got to land around 80,000 words. And at that point, it was like, okay, is there a more efficient way to tie these stories together and actually pay everything off?
Did that involve any drastic like plot changes or cutting out of characters or anything like that?
We had at the very beginning we had a simplification process because we were very ambitious. And at that point there was a second simplification. But I think you brought that to the table because when you had that what seemed to me like a panic moment, you were like, I'm not going to feel good until I have a solution. So it's like the next morning you kind of brought that.
It wasn't that hard of a problem to solve, but we did have to say, there's one of the darker sort of scenes towards the end that happens at the funeral home, which is kind of just mentioned in passing, where they get the blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we originally
A bunch of blood.
We originally, which incidentally, in doing the research, like we wanted everything to make sense and to be true to life, insofar as it could, other than the supernatural stuff. But like,
Don't tell him. Make it a game.
No, we're trying. Okay. How much blood do you think there is in an average human body in gallons?
I mean, I just read that part, so is it about a gallon? Like
What?
just one?
It's like about a gallon, between a gallon and a half to 2 gallons, depending on the person.
Okay, well, then you passed the test that you did read the novel.
Yeah.
But
that's a lot lower than we thought.
That
Yes,
alarmed me a lot, because if you just picture like a jug of blood, and you're like, that's my blood.
Yeah,
man.
right.
And
They were
fuels
bleeding
me.
into a milk jug,
Yeah.
an empty
Well,
milk jug, and it was half full. How alarmed would you have been before this conversation? I would have been like, yeah, I'm a bit alarmed, but I don't think I'm
well,
gonna
that's
die.
why you bleed. That's why you can actually bleed out.
out
Like
quick.
if you cut that femoral artery, that's
Yeah.
why it's okay. Unless you get some really specialized attention very quickly, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take long to fill up I fill up my milk jug every morning, don't y'all?
Right? Yeah. You just fill it up with
Don't
blood,
y'all?
pee, water,
Yeah,
whatever.
You got cows that right around.
It's like the opposite of how much skin you think is on the human body.
Oh, yeah, there's a
like
lot
when
of
you
skin.
unroll, which is
Yeah, yeah,
disgusting.
yeah.
But if you like unrolled someone's skin, it's
It
so
could cover
much.
the surface of the moon.
Yes.
Right.
Hey, want to talk about our sponsor real quick? Simply Safe Home Security. Did you know that burglary, according to a recent Gallup poll, it's the crime that most Americans are worried about? That is the #1 crime. Or maybe, if you're listening to this, you're not so worried about burglars or robbers. You're maybe worried more about ghosts, things of the paranormal persuasion. Think of Paranormal Activity 2. They have to hire a whole team of people to install their home security system. Well, with Simply Safe, you don't have to have the whole team of people putting cameras up in every corner and putting wires everywhere. It's designed to blend right into your house, so no wires, no drilling, super easy to set up, and that's why I think it is an excellent choice for home security if you are interested in that. It protects your whole home, 24/7 monitoring for a fraction of the cost of most other security services. No contract hidden fees or fine print. Won a bunch of awards from CNET to the New York Times. And yeah, it's $15 a month, and that's it. I think that's worth the feeling of security, knowing that someone will be there. I guess police dispatch is even faster, 3.5 times faster because of the video verification. They know what's going on before they show up. So if you want to try Simply Safe, go to simplysafe.com/deadmeat. You'll get free shipping and a 60-day risk-free trial. Go now and be sure you go to simplysafe.com/deadmeat so they know we sent you. Tell them Dead Meat sent you. That's once again simplysafe.com/deadmeat.
We think visually, and so we think about what does this look like on screen, because that's the medium that we understand, and then we sort of work backwards. So it's almost like the process of writing a novel for us is adapting a screenplay that we've already written in our minds.
Okay.
And so that scene was something that we had talked about for a really long time, but then it was actually, the book is just as much, maybe even more a comedy than it is horror, right?
Yeah,
and it was
very funny.
trying to mix the two. And so that was originally just a really funny scene of these two kids trying to drain an old man of his blood, having never done it before.
Well, the corpse.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
What are you doing?
An old dead
I
man.
only have a gallon.
And we kind of hated that got relegated to a paragraph. But it was the kind of thing that's like, oh, the pacing is here. We got to get to the end. And also, not only was it going to make it too long, but it was an example of like, sometimes we actually had to say no to some of the comedy that we had in mind, because sometimes comedy gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
There's a balance, and some people are like, I don't want there to be any humor in my horror.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm personally like a huge fan of the way the It franchise came together, because the movies are so funny. I laughed
They're so
Yeah.
funny.
so much.
Yeah.
And then what Jordan Peele's done is like, you're in the middle of this, like, I just got scared and I'm concerned, but now I'm laughing. Like the way that he's able to mix those two things.
For sure, yeah.
That was kind of, we aspired to that.
Yeah, that was
But you still got to pull
huge
back on some of the comedy.
influence on us. I think, especially having met Jordan Peele, and we had, I mean, in the Key and Peele days, we had them on our show, and like,
That's so cool.
and I think Jordan, well, maybe it was Keegan who knew who we were, but I was like, it was really cool that like they had a point of reference for us when they came in. But that was like in the Comedy Central sketch days. They were super cool guys. But then to see Jordan really be able to spread his wings and do what he's done,
Yeah.
it was just, I mean,
Phenomenal.
Yeah, it was
guy's
just,
a genius.
Yeah,
was
he's-
very
he's
inspiring.
A dream interview
Yeah.
for sure. Like, God, yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is amazing how much overlap I don't think you would realize at first there is between trying to script horror and trying to script comedy, because they're so subjective, but yet at the same time there are certain key things that I think are universally very funny,
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
farts.
like farts.
Farts
Farts,
are always
are funny
funny.
to
Always funny.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love it when anyone starts to make the argument that the toughest thing to do is either to make somebody laugh or to scare them. It's like, I mean, you can. It's easier to make somebody cry. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It's just like I walk in the house today. My 14-year-old son, he's watching The Good Doctor, and it's like I'm like, son, this show. It's just is a few tears short of This Is Us. I mean, it's designed only to make you cry.
Is that the one where
There's-
the kid is the
Yeah.
doctor and
He's like an autistic
Yeah.
kid doctor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like
It's like
autistic Doogie
Doogie Howser, right?
Oh,
okay.
okay. Yeah.
That's just what he is. But it's
Well, it's like
everything is designed
it's
to make
an
you cry.
unfunny Doogie Howser.
It's not
Oh,
funny.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fun, and it ain't scary either, really.
No, right.
It's
So what is
ju-
it even doing?
It just makes you cry. I mean, it's like low hanging fruit. It's like if you can scare somebody, that's difficult. It's like
Yeah.
and so I love it when people talk about like where are the horror Oscars? You
Yeah.
know, I'm sure you guys get into that, right?
Oh man, yeah. It
You
sucks
get
so
mad
much.
about it?
Oh
I
yeah.
guess so. But
where
then
are the- I
Well,
mean, you
comedy
yeah.
gets grouped into musicals
com-
already.
Yes, yeah.
Comedy
the same
also
way.
gets.
But there is
sure.
something like as horror fans and being part of the horror community, which is like the nicest fan base ever, and I'm not just saying that, but you know, there is something fun being part of a fan base that is considered trash a little bit. It is a bonding thing. You
brings
meet
you
other
together.
horror fans
being
and
an outcast.
you know that, yes, and so it does become this place for misfits. We met someone at our convention we were just at, who she was like, I don't even watch horror. I just come here with my fiance because we feel like we fit, and like everyone here's so nice. We meet all these people, we've never seen any of their stuff, but they don't care. It's just we like meeting all the
Well, you know
the
what my
other
theory
misfits.
about this is, and I don't just say this because I'm a personal horror fan, but I think that people who are into horror understand the carnal need to, you've got to do something to entertain your own
Intrusive
dark
thoughts.
desires.
Yeah.
And to do that in a healthy way, right? To do that.
Talking about Purge?
Yes, exactly. That's one of the things that makes Purge
Oh,
such a genius thing, is not just because it's this sensationalized exploration into what it would be like to actually give in literally to those urges, but it's doing it in a medium that kind of represents that for people. Because for most healthy people, just being able to watch The Purge and enjoy that is enough for them to, they don't then have to go murder someone.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's
I'm usually
interesting.
pretty satiated.
It's interesting
Right.
because these scariest characters in The Purge, in the later movies, we realize they're people who are like, at the top of the kind of social hierarchy. It's rich people, rich white people are and it is interesting looking at those characters and looking at, some people we run into in your book, and it's the same kind of idea of let's tamp down all the bad things, and then when they have the chance to let that out in a way that's considered acceptable and allowed is when it gets really scary.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess a corollary to this conversation helps me make sense of why you guys seem so nice. Like I can see it in your eyes. Like I don't know you that well. We just met.
Yeah.
We just met a few weeks ago, but like if you are as nice as you seem in your eyeballs, it's in your, are you at ease because you've let things go? It's like you don't have some darkness hidden that's like that you
It's like a mask. Yeah.
it's like there's a shame of darkness.
Well, think about the opposite.
Are you proud of your darkness? Are you just there's a release?
Well, because you think about the opposite. If what you do for a living is, like, there are people, in fact, I was talking to my niece about this because she's in North Carolina and she's got friends who go to, I'm sure Christy knows about this. There's like an etiquette school for like good Southern girls.
Oh, shit.
Cotillion.
Yes,
See, that
cotillion.
would be a great horror movie setting.
Yes.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
it's in
They
like-
they
Christy
teach you.
went to Cotillion.
She did. I knew she would have.
You know, like
Yeah.
bank
'Cause she's
that
got such
away.
great
That's
manners.
such a
She's got-
creepy
she knows
setting.
how
She
to
knows the
set a
salad
table.
fork.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yes, they teach you how to set the table
small,
and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you
And the
could
fact that it's
imagine,
only the girls that go to Cotillion is
the patriarchy
we can
is
get it.
alive and
Yeah,
well in many places. But the interesting thing about that is if you take somebody who this is their job is to enforce these ridiculous customs for little girls, it's like that. Where's your release? First of all, you're probably an asshole and when you just interact with people because you're having to worry about manners. And I think that there's got to be balance, right? So it's like, okay, I'm into this. I'm into watching people be torn apart in the imaginary world.
Yeah.
So that then I don't want to tear anybody apart in my real life.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, because you look at how horror and just real life, like what we see in the news, we see horror movies get more violent as the news gets more violent. We have more access with cameras. Technology is better. Like we always talk about on the podcast how we start getting zombie movies right as we start getting footage back from Vietnam, because this is the first time we're able to film stuff overseas and people are watching it on TV. So then there becomes this compulsion, I think, to make movies where it's a safe way to experience that and it's not real. We did an episode with our friend John he did a documentary about haunted houses and like extreme haunts where people can touch you and stuff. And it's like, why do people want to do that? And he cited I think he said the year, so 9/11 happens and Halloween Horror Nights that year at Universal, highest attendance ever.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Record-breaking
Wow.
attendance because people want to experience horror that is safe and not real.
Yeah, scared
because
in a safe,
we
controlled
want to
way.
be, we want to be scared. It's the adrenaline and
So-
it's fun.
Is that what's happening at your birthday every year?
You have a purge?
So my tradition is to invite my friends over to watch as scary of a horror movie as I can find at that time.
Ooh, what have you watched?
So we did the first year was The Conjuring that we did.
I love
Nice.
The Conjuring.
And the supernatural stuff is like, that just gets me. Like the stuff that makes me have a difficult time going to bed, even though I'm like, I don't think I believe in that, but because of that movie, I think maybe it's real.
Yeah.
You know. And then the Babadook, which was very scary. And then I can't remember everything that we've done. This year we did Sinister.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Lawnmower scene, man.
Goddamn.
And
Yeah, that movie's so scary.
my wife hates horror movies. My wife does not participate in my birthday horror experience.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
But
good to have
And
separate
I don't know
does.
why I do.
And a group of friends, I think we had like maybe 6 people. It's a small group because at least amongst my friends, I'm the guy who actually enjoys it. And like one of my friends was like, I haven't watched a horror movie in 15 years. He was like very, very nervous.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Before
next
that,
to him.
we had dinner before the thing. We're like, it's sort of like an hour and a half. We're just hanging out before the movie, and like I noticed he never sat down.
He was just
He was
nervous
very
to watch a
fidgety.
movie.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then
wow.
I mean that's really the. I do look forward to watching the movie for your birthday because in that group environment, it's so much. It's so like. I involuntarily scream and then I scare myself from being scared, and everyone else. It's just it's an added level of entertainment, just like what you get in the theater when everybody's just reacting.
Now, do you guys watch them alone sometimes? Like, are you into just sitting down?
I mean, we have to watch so many
You have
movies.
to watch so many that you don't have a choice at this point?
Most of it is by ourselves. Like,
Yeah, I was watching the original version of The Grudge, like the Japanese version, the other day by
Yeah, you were just
myself,
sitting
and
there
I was
watching
just
it.
sitting so far away from my computer. But yeah, watching them alone is so different.
we will
I
have.
still get really freaked out.
We'll occasionally, because among our like tightest group of friends, we are just the horror people. I mean, obviously, but they're not as into horror movies. So we'll occasionally have group screenings for movies where we're like, no, you
we
should really
think
watch
you
it.
could, yeah.
Because so like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's my favorite. Horror
Yeah,
movie,
her
so-
favorite, and it's like it's
That's
a really
the first one we ever watched together.
That's the one.
yeah.
In 6th
Isn't
grade.
it
To
fucked
use the
up?
southern vernacular, that's the one that runt me. Yeah, we went to Adam Nicholson's house
Oh,
for
man.
a sleepover.
Shout out
What
to
grade-
Adam.
What grade were we in?
6th grade.
Damn,
Yeah.
that's
Sixth
a
grade.
scary movie.
Well, because that was a big moment for me, the big night for me, because we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then we looked at Penthouse afterwards.
Oh, nice.
And so
You'll remember
it was,
that night.
It was my first porn and my first horror,
Very
all in
nice.
one day.
I was so scared by the movie. I didn't want to be exposed
You
to anything.
blocked
Yeah,
out.
you
I do
don't.
not
You
remember
don't want to
any
link
porn.
those two and
It's
like
too
have developmental
overwhelming.
issues
Yeah,
later.
I was too smart for that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all. But what I do remember is how horrifying and real that movie felt.
Yeah.
And then right afterward, again, we're just grade schoolers, and I don't know whose idea it was, but it's like, now let's go outside and walk through that cornfield
Yeah.
in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and while we
And-
were outside, we
and I-
stopped at the trampoline and looked at porn with a flashlight. You don't remember that?
No.
You remember the
How do you-
trampoline porn,
No.
dude?
No.
The porn really stands out in my mind even more than the Texas Chainsaw
Trampoline
Massacre.
porn.
You
I
averted
was
your
so-
eyes, man.
This is sounding like my childhood. Honestly,
so funny.
I had a
think I w-
trampoline and everything.
I think I was inside trying to hope that you forgot that I wasn't going
you
in the
didn't go
cornfield.
into the cornfield.
This
I
is
did go
like-
in the cornfield, but I think you came in and got me, and I missed the porn. I missed the only good part.
yeah, right.
It is
Hey, man,
so
I'll show it
funny.
to you later.
Like, obviously, I've just met you two, but having read your book, where I think there's some parallels, right?
Okay.
There's a few.
And it's so funny because this conversation, I'm like, yeah.
Well, actually, okay. So for those, to quickly fill in the gaps. So the main characters in the book are Rex and Leaf. It might sound a little bit like Rhett and Link.
When'd you make that decision?
Well, the starting point for the whole project was we had finished the Book of Mythicality, and we've always had something in mind around small town North Carolina in the 90s. We always assumed it would be a screenplay.
Okay.
But our agent at the time was like, have you ever guys ever thought about doing like your take on like the Hardy Boys, like a young Rhett and Link thing? And we were like, oh, like writing fiction. Okay, yeah, we haven't thought about that. We thought we would just move to the screenplay first, but then once we started talking, it quickly became something we got very excited about. So initially, it was essentially the characters were Rhett and Link, and the name of the town was Bleak Creek, North Carolina, which is where we're from.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why so much of the, what's true about the characters and their sort of disposition and the way they interact and the way they, like the strengths and weaknesses of Rex and Leaf are very much a parallel with us. And then all the stuff like the river and the rocks, the talking rocks, the big rock and the little rock, the tree, that's all from our childhood.
I figured, yeah.
How old were you guys when you met each other?
6, first grade.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend where like I don't remember meeting her because we were so young, and like we're still friends. That's the best. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but
Is it though?
Is it?
it's the best. But it actually, we got annoyed with ourselves. Now, I mean, some people are going to be annoyed. Like, guys, why'd you decide to write a novel and you basically just wrote it about yourselves? Can't you guys do anything that's not about you? Well, that remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But because that was the starting point, was to do something that we knew that world so well. We wanted to tell like a twisted version of something that could have happened in the South. And of course, we knew those characters so well because we know each other so well. But we got so annoyed at talking about it and saying things like, no, but then you're going to do this. And then we're literally saying you and I as we discuss the character choices. And it got so annoying that we were just like, we need to separate ourselves a little bit. So we went to Rex and Leaf, not very far, but it was actually a pretty monumental shift in our minds. And then we kind of were able to give them character traits that aren't exactly true about us. And that's when it changed from Bleak Creek to Bleak Creek, because it was like, oh, let's do something that, first of all, is just easier to understand and is more marketable, but also I think because Bleak is I'm not going to give away why it's called Bleak Creek, but obviously it has this intrinsic quality of like, okay, there's some negativity there. Why is it called Bleak Creek? How did it get that name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we also knew we wanted to play with the notion of belief. It being set in the Bible Belt, the Bible Belt can tend to tighten, on you as you're growing up, and it's so the idea of conformity was something that we wanted to work with, but even as in terms of how belief can get away from you, in terms of the things that you find yourself doing in the name of air quotes a good cause, so I think that's something that we knew that would be something that would help drive the story and send it darker the more that you read.
Right.
Yeah.
And I really like that. So the main characters are Rex and Leaf, and they're how old are they? They're
going into their 9th grade year, so they're both 14.
Yeah. I like how you have their perspective for a lot of the book, but you also have the Janine character.
Yeah.
Who is late 20s?
She's like 26.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she's someone who is coming back to the town after having gone away for college. And like, I really, especially since she's a film student, I really related to her character of just, because like I come from right outside Detroit, a small subdivision that's like, I don't know, 30,000 people. And just like, it feels very small and tight knit. And like, I've had that experience of going off to college and then coming back and just being like, oh, this is weird. This is how people live. This is how I used to live.
Yeah.
And also the experience of wanting to make a documentary out of anything I could. Being a film student, for her, it's kidney stones at first.
Right. Well, so Janine is a very aspirational character in a lot of ways. She's in the story for a number of reasons. One, that going back to the whole Seinfeld thing of like starting in multiple places and then bringing people together. But also, because we had 14-year-old protagonists, we knew that you might just immediately write this off as a YA book, which, I mean, it is a YA book in a lot of ways, but some people just feel like, I don't want to read something about teenage protagonists because a lot of times it feels like it's written from that perspective exclusively.
Yeah.
So we were like, we want to have
exclusively for that audience.
And we were like, we're actually writing this for ourselves, and it sort of appeals to, it's the same way we make everything that we do. It's kind of like, well, it's kind of for everybody. I mean, like, I'll let my kids read this, but I'm sure my parents will also read it. But Janine sort of represents a true adult perspective. But you're right. It was like, she kind of represents the clarity that you get about the place that you grew up when you move away, right?
Yeah.
So we not only did we grow up in North Carolina, but we lived there until about 8.5 years ago.
Oh.
That's where we started our YouTube career. That's where our initial studio was. And when you're in it, it's just like the joke is like, what is the joke about the fish in the water? And the fish says, "How's the water today?" And the other fish says, "What's water?" It's like when you're in it, you can't see it.
I've never heard that joke, by the way.
It's not a great joke, but it's a good analogy. But the idea that like you come to LA is a place where, and our friend Pete Holmes described it as it's an empty room, right? It's like anything goes in this town.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's not really an ethos other than just like maybe it's cutthroat and people are just trying to
What can you do for me?
defeat one another. It's very
Yeah.
transactional, but when it comes to belief and worldview, it's kind of a blank slate. And so you look back on the trappings of the place that you grew up, and so she kind of represents that, somebody who her parents are from the town and she's visited during the summers, but she's from a completely different place. She's in Manhattan. She's got an NYU film degree, and she comes back and she's like, man, now that I see this place as an adult, it's kind of weird. And being able to see the place that you come from in all its many shades is something that we wanted. We wanted to give that to somebody, and the two kids couldn't represent that perspective.
And I think for me, I was excited about being able to give the reader the inside view from different characters' perspectives. I mean, like I really like that about reading Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
You know, like every chapter, it's like, okay, whose mind am I in?
And I had that
this
thought.
chapter?
Yeah,
reading this.
the opening felt very like the beginning of each Song of Ice and Fire book is the opening.
Oh, that's cool.
You know,
yeah.
with
'Cause
the
it's
character
like
where you're like, what? Like
you
who
don't
is-
know the character is kind of tangential, but then it comes into
but it
play
is
later.
related later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were excited about that. I thought that was always a fun experience for me. So putting that into the novel was really cool.
It's funny when you were talking about the multiple tangents. I was thinking of did George R. R. Martin call it the Myronese knot, where he's like, I have too many characters inside plot.
Yeah, that was like his problem. That
this
took him
is
years
a
to sort out.
bajillion books now.
I can't imagine that. Just
Right.
having done this on a much smaller scale, it's just like,
Yeah.
And he's one of the
gosh.
garden writers who doesn't
Yes.
plan everything out, so it's just like, what's happening?
Right.
And the other thing about Janine, I was wondering what you guys thought, like having learned that like you came from film school and all that.
I
Like,
just assumed you'd gone to film school.
Right.
No,
It
we
felt
did
so
not.
real.
But the
Yeah.
interesting thing with her is that, I mean, we wanted her to be able to give the outsider's perspective on Bleak Creek and on everything that was going on and how the people interacted and the standards. And but the opposite happens for her. She starts to gain perspective when she comes back to Bleak Creek on what she's left behind and the relationship and the dynamic there in terms of like how she related to her ex-boyfriend and all that. So that was also an exciting thing to explore in her character. It was just important to us that we rounded her out.
Yeah.
And that she mattered, that she wasn't just there to help solve something that kids weren't capable of, but that she is her own complete character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels that way for both Janine and I would say like the other fourth main character, perspective character, Alicia.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when at first the book, I think the first few chapters are from Rex and Leaf's perspectives.
Yeah.
And then I was really excited when Janine was introduced and I was like, oh, cool. Like another perspective, like you said, with a different like age and different approach to everything going on around her. And then I was also excited to see that Alicia was like a point of view character and not just a plot device. You know, I was a little worried early on that she would just be used as a way to motivate Rex and Leaf. And then later it was like, oh no, she's an actual
She's-
person.
We were very careful not to do
character
that.
that
Well,
that
and you
characters have a crush on, and like that's.
Yeah. Right.
And
But
not just-
it's very I without saying anything, I think it's done very well and is really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, well, and you know, I would say especially with the Janine character. So we got a lot of help from a more experienced novelist, Lance Rubin, who's credited as the With.
Oh, yeah.
And
I thought you said The Wiz.
Yeah, that's what I
I was
thought.
like,
He's going to ease on down that road.
with
yeah.
Lance And he hasn't written in this particular genre before, but we just our initial conversation, we just really hit it off. And he went to NYU.
Okay.
And so he was very instrumental in kind of fleshing out.
He's Jewish.
Yes, he's Jewish
Like
and went
Janine.
to NYU. And so fleshing out her backstory with Dennis and the boyfriend was incredibly helpful in that. And I think that, because obviously with the Rex and Leaf stuff and the Southern stuff, it's like, that's our world. We can go very deep there. But it was one of those things that it was already a collaborative experience between the two of us. And then we've got Lance in the mix, who, when Janine's character was really taking the lead on her backstory, I think that's one of the reasons that it feels like a literal different perspective.
Yeah.
Because he took the lead on her backstory. And so it's like, even the thing about Dennis, which was something we hadn't discussed ahead of time. It was like, we knew that she went to NYU. We knew what she was going to represent. We knew that she was going to be this thing that was very intriguing to Rex and Leaf, because they're making their horror film, Polterdog. And we wanted to go to film school, but it seemed less practical than engineering school. So we, for a number of reasons, didn't end up making it happen. So that was one of the ways that we kind of, in the collaborative process, those very clear perspectives came out.
Yeah, but it's so crazy because, like, Janine, it was like, this is what it's like being a female student in film school.
Right away you were saying
I was like,
that.
oh, yeah, that's why I just assumed you'd both gone to film school. But even just, like, yeah, her ex, Dennis, is, like, such an amalgam of, like, people I interacted with who, like, make film school suck,
Tell us more.
Oh, I just
Don't hold back.
Drop some names.
No.
Well,
But,
what was it like for you?
I mean, it's kind of like what she goes through, where he makes student films that are, I love the like not Tom Hanks movies are so funny, and I was sitting there trying to come up with some of my own, but none were as good. And just like him being given like the benefit of the doubt, like, this is genius, right? Right away screening something, and her being like, but this is just stuff you kind of took from other places, which is like what you run into is, so often.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I was in film school, I just made Kevin Smith movies.
And a lot of people our age.
But
yeah.
thankfully, no one led me astray and
Yeah.
said they were good. I
Yeah.
learned real fast.
Whereas I feel often if you're a female student and you want to make something a bit weirder, you want to get a bit more experimental, there's so much more scrutiny, I think, up front based on whether or not like, does this idea work? And I don't know, I think you have more attention placed on what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think, Janine kind of fell for the trap of going under Dennis's wing.
Yes.
And
it's
and then she's, even though she's physically separated herself from him and coming back home, it's like he's looming over her the entire time.
And that's part of it too, is especially once you get to like, you're close to graduating film school, and it's really easy as a woman to be like, well, I could be successful if I kind of glom onto these, maybe other male students who I think are going to have a shot at a good career. It's just so much easier and more comfortable to do that. So I relate so much to that,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it was important for us that we give Janine her arc. And then for Alicia, it was the same thing. It's like, we knew what we needed to be careful about in terms of constructing what she calls the triumvirate, the relationship triangle with Rex and Leaf and herself. And then being able to give her, she's not the Princess Peach to be rescued.
Yeah.
Is what we discussed in the room.
And then we put it in the book.
So then it's like, well, if there's a way to get that line in there, we're going to do it, just to hit it on the head. But.
Well, and she's also, it's funny because I think she is aspirational in that we were just good kids growing up, right? Like, we looked at the authority structures in the small town that we lived in, and we quickly kind of just knew, even though we were like mischievous and like did some, messed around, we were good kids.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to be disrespectful ultimately.
You trusted the authorities.
Yep.
And,
We're going to toe the line, and we know how to succeed, and we know how to receive approval and love in this system, right? Which is to behave and be a good kid. But a lot of times those authority structures need to be challenged, right? And I think that Alicia represents a kid who actually is doing that. Is like she's willing to stand up to people. She was dealing with her own stuff and growing up in the South and having a black father and a white mother, which in itself was a struggle. But she kind of represents the kind of kid that if I could go back and give advice to myself, it would be like, hey, listen, like
To us, yeah.
a lot of people, you feel like all these adults have it all figured out, but the truth is that they're just trying to figure it out every day, just like you are.
And that, yeah, even though the system may like work for you and who you are and being able to work within it, it's not going to work for everyone for various
Right.
reasons.
And it doesn't make you worse because you don't fit into this, you don't conform into this system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think for me, Alicia is my hero in the story. Or maybe Whitewood, depending on your perspective.
He's very interesting.
Oh yeah, I really like that shading that comes in.
Yeah, me too.
That's not just a one-dimensional bad guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's really that was
was
good.
Gloved
That was-
church organist.
Yes.
Yeah, that was important for
Pig
us as well
master.
because it was just like we don't have to talk about the Joker.
We haven't seen it yet, so
I
thank
Oh,
you.
you haven't?
Okay.
Okay, you
Yeah,
haven't seen it yet.
busy month. Busy month.
Okay, but without getting into any spoilers or anything, it's just like obviously the controversy around the movie is that it explores, what actually leads to someone being evil incarnate,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were like, okay, we're not trying to necessarily make this person Whitewood sympathetic, but it's like, everybody really is a result of the way that their DNA has mixed with their environment. There's really where else does anything come from, really, right?
Yeah.
And so without getting into philosophical discussions of the free will,
Determinism. Yeah.
We just did a two-parter on creepy children and horror, and that's a
Oh.
lot of that is, are we born bad or
Yeah,
made that?
exactly.
That's so, kids,
but we were like,
it's so
listen,
loaded.
people. There's a reason that there's actually a pretty good reason why this guy is behaving in the way that he is, and what does that do to you? How does that make you feel about his actions?
Yeah, like does it justify them in your head, or
Yeah.
that's up to you to decide?
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's why I'm a
exactly.
big fan of Song of Ice and Fire.
Yep.
It's so rare you get in that series someone who is just evil and that's it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
exist.
Some Ramsey.
Like Ramsey.
Right.
It is interesting that, realistically, who is going to be going around just being evil to be, like, their
Yeah,
motivation is, I
everyone's a
am
person.
evil, and I am, no,
well,
everyone's
and that's
got,
the way it was, like, Captain Planet back in the day, right? Who was the villain in Captain Planet? The guy who was all he did was
God,
pollute.
I was going to say pollution.
Yeah, so
I
it's
think
like-
it was those 6 rings of plastic that you take off a can.
And the geese
Float-
get their next
floating
step
in
in.
the
But
ocean.
in my recollection, and I might be wrong, maybe I'm not giving the writers enough credit, but I just remember him polluting for pollution's sake.
Right.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't like in the name of industry or capitalism.
Right,
But
yeah.
it probably was, but in my mind, and that didn't compute as a kid. It was just like, this guy just wants to pollute. He wakes up with the desire to pollute. But nobody really does that,
Yeah.
right? It's just pollution is a byproduct of other intentions.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully we capture some of that, the complexities of,
I do gotta ask, how are you guys Stephen King fans?
Yeah.
Okay, because I feel like a lot of that shines through. The age of the characters is a common thing
Yeah.
in his stories, and just
Kids on bikes.
kids on bikes.
We always call them bicycle kids.
Yeah.
It's such
Or
a character
scooters.
trope that we love. Yeah.
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 Yeah, or scooters. Yes, or
A
scooters.
little bit of scooter action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the kids on bikes things for us, I mean, there's also like a Stranger Things looming large
Yeah.
over the fact that it's kids on bikes, retro. of
Yeah,
a
and
certain
I
age.
love the early '90s setting.
Yeah.
'cause, I mean, not only does it, I'm sure it made writing the plot a little easier with not having to write away smartphones or the internet. you know?
Right.
Yeah, it puts it in a simpler time.
It
But
was a simpler time.
yeah, I mean, I'm we're old enough to remember that switch from the analog world to the digital world,
internet,
and I
yeah.
remember having these experiences of just riding around, no phones or connections, and just being with your friends.
Yeah, and I think for us, I mean, the starting point, what really sparked our passion to dive into this project was really tapping into our shared experience going into high school, because it was such a formative time in our lives that we often talk about, like on our own podcast. We're going back and we reminisce a lot about it's that time when there's so much hope associated with, I'm going to high school, things are going to be different, you know, and I remember what it felt like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I think that's what got us excited. And then, so really we pushed forward kind of in spite of Stranger Things, I think. And then people might assume, and even the endorsement on the back is from the, you know, the author of the Stranger Things book. And
the prequel, yeah.
The prequel.
Brenda Bond, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we got a great endorsement from her, which made me feel great. But it's kind of like, the starting point for us was, okay, we're doing it for our reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then you toy with some of the same things. And then with the Stephen
Well,
King
it's the same-
comparison,
I
I
mean,
think that's very
it's
flattering.
I mean, the way that I've kind of described it is like if, you know, Stephen King and Steven Spielberg and maybe John Hughes had a love child, but it's like, okay, well that's what happened. That's Stranger Things was inspired by all the same.
Yeah, because Spielberg also has those adventurous
Yeah.
kids.
But
Yeah.
it's like, it's in the era, right? Like, it's, you know, it and
Yeah.
it's just, and we talked about this on like a couple episodes ago where we were talking about this kind of current movement. It was part of the creepy kids thing, but right now kids in horror aren't so creepy. We have these like bicycle kids. I don't know why we started calling them that, but I think it works.
I
And
get it, yeah.
it's just and this to me fits right in with that and makes sense because we're living in a time where kids are literally showing up on the news begging for adults to believe them and telling adults that they're scared. Like, that's what we're living through. We
Wow,
have like
yeah.
child activists, which I don't know if we ever have seen like kid activists before be so prominent. I think that's why we're getting this in horror, especially because it's like, yeah, this is what younger people are afraid of, and it's adults being scared of other adults not believing kids and having to live with those consequences.
Wow,
you
that's-
know? Yeah. So I think like this makes sense to me in the kind of current wave of film and stuff that we're seeing. It's-
Yeah, and we've talked about how with Stephen King, when he writes those kind of characters, he just has this ability to really put you back in that age and make you remember how it felt. And that's the same way I felt here. So when you said just now that like you remember that feeling, it shines through, and that you just like capture it, because not everyone remembers, I think, what it was like and those like complicated feelings and, like you said, that hope, but also those fears. And it really
Well, like the
captured it.
unknown of going into the high school cafeteria for the first time. You know, you've got this scene where they're trying to figure out where to sit, and like the words of Rex's older sister are ringing in his ears about how if you sit with you could sit with the wrong person the first day of your freshman year and your whole life will get screwed up.
Yeah.
And I have an older brother who was a senior when we were freshmen. And he never told me that specifically, but it's like every single idea that I had about high school was through the filter of this older sibling. And so you go in with all these preconceived notions of things that you've heard. And we
And Saved by the Bell a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, so we wanted to capture that.
It was Boy Meets World for me.
Okay.
And that's why they're specifically, we chose the summer between 8th and 9th grade as the starting point.
Yeah.
Because it was like, this is like
I remember that
anticipating
summer
the
for me.
unknown, right?
I remember getting to that age and starting high school and that's when you start doing the mental math where you're like, okay, it's now 4 more years till I go to college, and then it's 4 years of college, and then I'm just a grown-ass adult. And then I get, it's freaky. You start to realize how quick.
Yeah, especially
Life
because
goes by.
like at that age, it's like right in the middle of being kind of self-aware of you're a human being, but like still being really naive and not knowing exactly how everything works.
Yeah.
And just those eyes opening, you know?
Oh, I will say something I very much appreciate about this. This is a trope we always discuss. I don't necessarily hate this trope, but it stresses me out.
Oh, sure, yeah.
When you have a main character who like knows something is true and you, the audience, are shown that it's true and no one believes them, when that goes on for a whole movie or book, it stresses me out so bad. And so I love that we have, like, Janine is... I just found her very cathartic. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just,
like,
I was like,
believe
okay,
you.
I have a character that I'm being introduced to. I'm like, I know she's gonna believe these kids.
Yeah.
And she made, I'm like, oh, okay.
And she's also going to have some really smart ass to say
Yeah.
at the same time, hopefully, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
the kidney stones thing. That was
yeah, why kidney stones?
Did that
They're
come from
just-
anything, or?
I think
well,
kids-
there
kidney
is a
stones are
connection.
Oh, really?
So I can't answer that.
Oh, you mean like in the story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Well,
But yeah, adding that element to the story. I don't know. I'm someone who I always say I have to tell my viewers I'm not a creative person, unfortunately. And some people are like, no, you're creative. I'm like, no, I can take other things and kind of synthesize them into something that resembles creativity. But as far as like coming up with some of the stuff, just like, whole cloth. Out of thin air.
I'm like, wow, you made that up. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm genuinely,
Well, the kidney stones thing. So, the book was there were so many other avenues that we went down. Like there was like probably a month where the idea was that there was a cannibalism idea with kids in the barbecue, like. Whitewood was serving kids in the barbecue.
I thought that for a second. I was like, oh, okay, okay. I was like Texas Chainsaw family. Oh,
well, and that was actually, that they. I believe it was in Texas.
Can we not mention that movie again?
Texas Chainsaw?
I can't
it's
not
bringing back
picture
It's
stuff.
so funny
there's
because
a real story of people serving like dudes serving people as barbecue.
Oh, that's
Because
Just think of
pork
the
and people
penthouse
are
and
pretty.
stuff, you know?
yes.
The meat looks the
I
same.
wasn't there for that.
It's funny because the mug we get, I did not do this on purpose,
Oh, yeah.
but this mug is from the house where they filmed Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yep.
We were just there. It is now a restaurant,
Take
and
it
you
with
can
you.
order steak there. But did you order the steak?
I did get a steak there,
They will,
yeah.
Don't you know what? Steak's fine. That's really hard to pull off. But it's if you get pulled pork,
Yes.
there might be
Oh.
people in there,
Okay.
and you would never know.
I think that's what they're serving at the gas station in that movie. It's like the rotating
Right.
meat,
So
Yeah.
what do we learn that people
What-
taste like? They taste very very iron rich.
Oh.
Isn't that what we?
That's what you learn.
I mean, they call people long pig, but I don't know if it's because they taste like pork.
I think
or
people
anything.
would probably be pretty gamey because of our diet. I mean, we've had human breast milk a couple of times on the show.
Really?
Oh yeah, how was
You're
that?
excited now.
Yeah.
Why do you get so excited?
Yeah.
Well, we've had it from two different women, and one of them.
Is there a difference in taste?
They
Oh,
were
yeah,
not
yeah,
present.
Yeah.
At
Okay.
the time, I'm just.
Oh yeah.
Don't picture it like.
Yeah. It was.
Oh no,
Like,
It
I
was
give
pumped,
it to
and
you.
then we drank it out of a
Yeah.
container. The first one was, in fact, we were guessing what animal the milk came from, and I said bear or raccoon or something.
Wow.
Yeah, you said it tastes like they've been eating dumpster trash.
Yeah.
And it was a
Because-
friend of ours who graciously donated. That's what her baby was eating, man. Dumpster juice milk.
Well,
Like when you
omnivores,
have the-
man. Omnivores.
Yeah, when you have the diet
you
of
never
a
know what you're
human.
going to eat, so that's why I said bear. But
So that meat,
Oh my god.
that meat has got to be.
Yeah, here's my. I feel like this is something we always ask our
Neapolitan.
friends. I feel like it's very revealing. If you were offered the chance to
God.
eat human and it was consent, like the person knew that they were going to be,
They wanted to
they
be
wanted,
eaten
the,
after
yeah,
death.
exactly. Would you do it?
yes.
That's my, yeah. Like,
I'm trying to think of the title and thumbnail first, and once I got that down, then I know I
if
got
this
the clicks.
is ever an episode of the show, like,
Oh my God.
because that
Is
is
that-
also my answer's like yes.
Is it
100%.
legal?
Are you
I don't
donating
know.
your?
You know?
I will. No, no.
Well, and you know what? And according to our mythical chef Josh, it's technically vegan.
Wait,
Because we're not animals.
You have to take that.
we are animals first.
He,
off.
he, he
are
has a whole argument, but he thinks it's based on consent.
I have
And
not
and
heard the argument.
Oh.
And animals can't consent.
Yeah.
But people
Okay.
can.
I get that. I was a philosophy minor.
When you
almost.
think about it, it is. If you look at it that way, it is kind of more ethical than
Right.
But
Yeah.
you,
I like
what,
this.
what were you volunteering for? To eat
it.
human
Oh
with
yeah.
us?
Yeah. We'd
Yeah.
eat human with it.
Human
If you
meat
guys get the
taste
opportunity,
test.
we'll
Yeah.
be there.
yeah. If
Okay.
it's consensually like here.
Yeah.
Eat.
What about if somebody just gets? The interesting thing is if somebody just cuts something off.
Yeah,
And
and
they're
are still living.
around,
Mhm.
and they're with you as you're eating it. And they're
that'd be
watching.
I
weird.
literally had that thought like a minute ago, and I was like, "But what could you
Then
lose?"
but
And
I
have
feel
it
like
not
the
be
weirder
weird?
part wouldn't necessarily be like eating like that person's foot or what, but it would just be the fact that I'm like, why are you like?
Why are
is
you
this
here?
a fetish? Like, is this, I think that's when it's weird.
Isn't there a Treehouse of Horror where Homer like keeps eating parts of himself?
Oh god, I mean probably.
Probably.
I think there's a diminished return to that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So
Wow.
the kidney stones were originally. It's not that they're not meaningful now, and they're not, and they are tied to sort of the central, the central set piece of the whole book. but yeah, they played a little bit more of a central role at one iteration of the plot.
And then as it changed, you just kind of tailored it to change.
So
I don't recall it this way. I just recall that we worked backwards.
Well, I don't. This isn't really a spoiler. Okay, I'm not going to mention anything about the book, but like, okay, so there is there's a spring. There's actually a mineral spring in Fuquay Arena where our last studio was in North Carolina, right? And it's like one of the only mineral springs in that area. And at this point, it's just this little trickle of water with like a plaque, right? But apparently at one point it was big enough for like people to get in and like bathe and swim or whatever. And there was a hotel there. It was actually kind of the reason the town existed. And of course people believe that you can go there and be cured of all kinds of things, including kidney stones.
Okay.
So that's the way we got to kidney stones. And then
That's why we started talking about kidney stones.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Right, because it
I
was
agree with that.
it was an indicator of something.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
But we do know is if you go to the only pizza place in Bleak Creek, Lil Dino's, which actually was the only pizza place in Bowie's Creek when we were growing up.
Like same name?
Yeah, we kept the same name because it's no longer there as an Exxon gas station. Yeah, at the counter you'll see a big jar of kidney stones.
That was legit?
That was not legit.
Okay. I can never tell you.
That would have been pretty crazy.
And I do have a great personal fear of kidney stones because my brother has had like 5.
Ooh, have you had any?
I haven't had any.
Okay.
But like he's a little bit older, and I keep thinking it's gonna happen.
yeah.
I'm gonna wake up one morning and there's gonna be like some crazy back pain. And I'm gonna be like, oh no, this is it.
It's back pain. That's how it happens.
A lot of times, so because it's
not like pee hole pain.
Yeah, I thought it was pee hole.
No,
pain.
apparently the pee hole part is the easy part. The pain is when it's
depending on the pee hole.
as soon as it dislodges from the kidney and starts trying to make its way down, whatever that is that gets to your bladder, that's where the pain kicks in.
Oh man.
Is that a male thing or no?
No.
Okay.
I think it's equal opportunity.
Right.
Because I always hear it's more painful than pregnancy, but that sucks that women have to deal with both.
I've been told it's the only thing that
Sometimes at the
is
same time.
on the same level as labor pains.
Yeah.
So it's like the only thing a man can experience
Yeah,
that equals
because it's
that.
thing going out whole. It's bigger than the.
Exactly.
But he said the pee hole pain's not even the painful part.
Just rolls right out.
Yeah. In fact, that's the fun part.
Yeah, that's the fun. You aim it.
And you have a little souvenir.
They want you to catch it so the doctor can, I don't know.
Analyze it. Yeah.
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 It's real. like testing for gold.
There's
Yeah,
gold
exactly.
in them there kidneys.
But that was
bend it into see if it's
Yeah.
counterfeit.
that was one of the things we really got into it with our editor about was that Janine's working title for her documentary, which fizzled out, is Kidney Stoners.
Yeah.
And he was like, guys, that's a bit much, isn't it? Isn't that kind of, I don't know if he thought it was cheesy or hokey.
And for us, it was based on. I think we may have taken this reference out. I remember going through and thinking, this is too. We had it in there for him, really, because one of our favorite documentarians is Ross McElwee, who he made a film.
You probably shouldn't know. Who
He's
this guy.
super small time. Well, kind of. He made a film called Sherman's March, and then there was a really, really long subtitle.
Yeah, and
it was like it was basically following the path of Sherman around the South, but also exploring nuclear proliferation, but also visiting his ex-girlfriends, and he had a way to fit that into a title.
Yes.
That sounds
okay.
yeah.
It's like, and it's just him and a camera. And so that one was very cool. Like we loved like
and that was the kind of film he would have made. And
like
he
real
would have called
people.
it Kidney
Yeah.
Stones.
You know, in the way like you were talking about having seen our local commercials from back in the day.
God, yes.
And when we heard people started drawing the comparison to Ross McElwee whenever we were making like the Red House furniture and like really using real people in their own ads. So that's when I believe we discovered him. And then he had another movie. What were you getting at? What was your point?
My point was
Because if you're talking about the Florida documentary, that's a different.
That's Errol
guy.
Morris.
Yeah, Errol Morris.
Which I was about to say. You're talking about Errol Morris now because Vernon, Florida.
Right.
No, but I'm saying that
Which
like
Vernon, Florida, that's a great documentary if you haven't seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
making a list up
and I'm
here.
actually I'm talking about both of them, but my defense in the weird name was Ross McElwee.
Right,
but
that's not in the novel.
But the subject matter is more, Errol Morris.
But
Yeah.
it's totally something that, I mean, you guys tell us. We didn't go to film school. Wouldn't you want to do a documentary on a town that had everyone was getting a bunch of kidney stones, and wouldn't you call it Kidney Stoners?
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, that for sure.
It is like, yeah. You
kicks
watch
ass.
like Roger and Me once, and you're like, okay, time to go document like the downfall of a town. Let's go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to encourage. I know that a lot of our audience is. We do have. I've seen comments on our stuff saying that sometimes people say they don't really read much, and I feel like if that's you, maybe give it a shot.
This is a good one.
It's a good one to break
That's
through.
the thing is, I think maybe people have the idea that if you are someone who reads all the time, you have to be reading like War and Peace. And,
like the
great
canonical
works.
books.
Like, no,
yeah.
you read whatever the fuck you want.
This isn't
Like,
this is an easy read.
Yeah,
It is. It's a
fun.
very. I read it in 3 days, and I'm a slow ass reader.
You can get
man.
through it quickly. We didn't want to, we didn't want to ask too much of people because I've got about 12 books at my bedside table that
I
I'm
have
halfway
so
through.
many.
It's falling over.
Yeah.
And if it's more than 300 pages, I'm basically at some point I'm just like, yeah, I get it. And then I'm,
Yeah.
And I think we're battling against people's attention spans. So yes, we think we try to keep it fast paced and make it easy to read. And if you just insist on not reading it, there is an Audible version as well.
Oh,
Do you guys read it?
We decided not to.
Oh, okay.
Because
Yeah.
honestly, we just wanted to go the more legit route. I think it's like with the whole Rex and Leaf thing.
Yeah.
We didn't want to like say, and we read it.
Yeah.
And it's like let's.
Yeah,
you
because
know,
then it feels almost like you have to do it yourself, or else it wouldn't get done. If it does lend some legitimacy that someone else is like, oh, I'll read.
Well,
I'll
and
read
there's so many characters, and there's so much dynamic range, and you've got people
We didn't
of
wanna
different
distract
ages, and so
from the experience
we
of
got
the stories.
really experienced reader Vikas Adam, who he did Ender's Game, and he's done Life of Pi. I mean,
Oh,
he's
wow,
just
cool.
like,
Oh,
and he can
cool.
just embody so many different people so well that we were like, all right, let's hand it over to a professional. We did do an exclusive interview on the Audible
Great.
version, and we also introduced the novel. But yeah, we handed it over to the professional to
And is that available the same day?
Yes,
as this
it
release?
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love audiobooks. I've done so many different ones.
Yeah, that's how you did it.
Yeah. It still counts. Why wouldn't? It's so weird. People think that doesn't count. It's like, but why?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
why are we
using-
even counting?
Yeah.
I think is what you're
Why
really saying,
are-
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you had, if someone was like, I kind of want to try writing a book. If you had one piece of advice to give them, and they had never written a book before, since you guys, since this is your first
Yeah.
novel, you're not authors by trade.
Right. Wow.
And if that someone
I can't
happens
imagine
to be named
if-
James,
Yeah. It's like,
I can't imagine doing the gardening approach if you've never. I don't know though. I mean, again, this is the only way we've done. We only know what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
I would say
It's
that
tough.
I would say that don't let yourself get intimidated. I mean, we basically have been suffering from imposter syndrome since day one.
Yep.
Yeah.
In every room that we find ourselves in, when somebody's asking us a question, as if we're at least somewhat of an authority on any particular thing, we always are like, we're just two guys who grew up together and wanted to create things. But I think that while we don't have like a formal education in the arts, we have engineering degrees. The idea of storytelling, while of course reading a lot and writing a lot is the best way to write well, but storytelling is intrinsic to the human experience, right? Let us not forget that oral traditions existed before the written word, and people.
Well, you speak it in like old English all the time.
And
Let us
Let not we forget.
and there were people who specialized in just telling stories around a campfire. I grew up in a family where my dad would just tell us all the stuff that he did as a kid. And it was just like, we were like, oh, he's got so many great stories about the time he was about to get into a fight with the guy, and it was so much bigger than him. And he was like, you ought to take off that nice sweater before we fight. And when the guy got it up around his head, he started beating the hell out of him. And it's like, you can be a good storyteller if you just lived life with a tuned in and observing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I think that it does help. Like, we have a great editor. We had a great collaborator with Lance who's written a bunch of novels. So sometimes they can take an idea and actually make it more cohesive than we're going to do in our first try. But I think in general, just don't be intimidated. Just if you've got a story, get it out there, then let people read it, and just know that it's probably going to be changed a lot. Even you've got the uncorrected proof. I don't know. There's other things that were changed.
I was so curious what's different.
I can't remember. There's a couple of things towards the end that we realized there was a couple of inconsistencies, I think, and that are in the final version.
We're talking sentences, though.
They're very small. Yeah,
Not like plot
it didn't
points,
change the number of pages or anything like that. But just know that it's pretty much a never-ending process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So commit enough time to it.
Yeah. Cool.
You're not going to meet your deadline.
Yeah, just forgive yourself for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. I've got some ideas kicking around. Like, seriously, reading this was an inspiration. Because I was like, I'm...
yeah, you should do it completely.
I'm still stuck on Girls Reform School horror movie. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like an etiquette school.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
boarding school. I'm like,
There you go.
Cotillion.
I
such
don't
a-
even know what that word is.
Yeah,
I've
where does
never
that come
heard that
from?
before.
That sounds
French.
Cajun.
Is it like a
Right.
region?
oh yeah,
Don't look at me.
Cage, yeah.
But I don't
know
even
how
know
to
what
set
like
a
that
table.
school is. Y'all are talking
oh no,
about it
I
like,
don't know. Just,
oh, you
that's
don't?
just as a thing, and you send your little
Okay.
girl off to learn how to
Manor school. Yeah.
pour
I thought
tea.
maybe I was just missing out on something
No.
from childhood that just I missed the memo
No.
on. But okay.
Well, it's a race between the three of us to write it. Then you're out.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. Cool. Well, I'll be on. If you go
That's
to the
right.
channel right
Yes,
now,
today.
yeah,
James
You
makes
helped us
a
out.
pivotal appearance on Good Mythical Morning to help us make a really, really difficult decision.
Yeah, and
And
we're
we're
the
gonna
best
see.
Halloween,
We're gonna see how people feel about your decision.
best Halloween
Oh, man.
candy
I will
of all
say-
time tournament.
I got actually angry. I won't say about what, but
yeah. I help them.
We
decide.
got your back, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I help them decide the better candy of two, and I'm a great choice for that since I don't even like candy.
That's right. Yeah, we like
Very
to bring on
impartial.
unqualified people to help us make those kind of decisions.
Right? So yeah, make sure you check that out. I don't know, maybe there's one of those freaking bubbles that pops up so that you can
Yes.
click that. That'd be cool. That's on you though, so
Yeah.
I just made more
That's
work
my
for
job.
you. Cool.
And we made it easy. Just go to bleakcreek.com, and that will then
nice.
link you out to every possible place that you could possibly get a book,
Awesome.
wherever you want to.
And then I'm guessing everyone who's watching or listening to this already knows you guys, but where should people follow you if this is the first time they've ever heard of Rhett and Link and they really digged your voices?
Good Mythical Morning on YouTube. Rhett and Link on Instagram.
Yeah.
All right.
all right.
Cool.
So next week we're gonna talk about Midsummer. Finally,
Oh.
everyone is dying for us to cover Midsummer, and it's happening.
Yeah.
I have an outfit. James is gonna have an outfit.
Oh, I am?
Yeah, we're
Are there
gonna
flowers?
have. Oh yeah, we're gonna have.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah,
Or wait, can I have a bear suit?
we can arrange that.
Yeah,
we
I
can
would like
arrange
that. That'd be kind of cool.
Okay, I'm gonna make I'm gonna.
Burn down the set at the
Mm-hmm.
end. So yeah, that'll be next week. Guys, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining
Yeah,
us.
thanks
you
for having us.
fun.
so
Yeah,
much.
this is so great. I hope we can hang out and do other stuff in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, I'll
Definitely.
come eat people with you guys.
Yeah, have us
Yeah,
over
yeah,
to eat
yeah,
people.
we'll
Yeah,
remember
whoever
that.
figures that out first, the other is invited.
Yeah, great. Follow Dead Meat on social media at Dead Meat James on Twitter and Instagram.
I'm at Carebeck, CareBecc on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want merch, deadmeatstore.com.
Yeah. All right. Until next time, I'm James.
I'm Chelsea.
And this is Rhett and Link. And this has
Hey.
been the Dead Meat Podcast. Woo!